Welcome, my name is Dawn Hayes. I'm excited to practice with you today. I wanted to ask you to grab a blanket. If you have 2 blocks, grab 2 blocks. If you don't have blocks, a step stool or a chair will work really well. We're going to explore some standing balancing poses today, and so you could also use a bookshelf or even a wall at certain points in practice. You'll start on your back, so whenever you're ready, lie down with your arms by your sides and your knees bent, and have soles of your feet on the floor. As you scan your body, take a moment to check in with your connection to the space and the room around you. And that connection comes in many forms. Through your eyes and what you can see, the light in the room, through your ears and what you can hear both in the room and outside. Through your sense of touch, as you notice the temperature and your skin on the earth below you. And as you place yourself in this moment using your senses, notice if there's any distractions that might gather your attention. And that could be a distraction in the room around you, like your cell phone, that you can turn off and set aside. It might be a distraction from inside you that you don't have the capacity to power down quite so easily. But as you acknowledge whatever it is that is pressing for your attention, allow yourself to focus on what is most important in this moment. And since you've set aside time to practice today, what if you made your connection to your body, your connection to sensation, your connection to your mind and the things that arise, the most important thing for you to notice, to be with in this moment? When you're ready, walk your feet so they're about as wide as your sticky mat. Bring your arms out to the side like wings. On your inhale, tip both knees to the right like windshield wipers. Exhale, return to center. Inhale, both knees to left. Exhale, return to center. And do this a few more times, side to side. As you explore this movement, noticing what it feels like to tip your legs. One leg will turn inward while the other leg moves outward. As you invite the spiral of your thigh bone, the gentle twist of your hips and spine, notice how movement can help to bring presence, can help to bring a focus to sensation. And when you're ready, pause with knees in center. Interlace your fingers behind the back of your head, with your elbows off to the sides and resting near the floor if possible. Hinge from your ribs, doing a side bend. Slide your head and your elbows on the earth, making a bit of a crescent or banana shape with your ribs. Slide back to center and do the other side. As you swoosh your upper back on the floor like a hammerhead shark, notice what this movement feels like in your waist and in your ribs. This is one of my favorite movements to start practice with because of the way it helps me open the sides of the diaphragm and lungs. I feel like I get a smoother, longer, a little bit more spontaneous breath after doing this movement. Then next time you slide upper back to one side, tip knees opposite. Head and knees return to center and tip knees and head other direction. So they're still going opposite one another. I kind of think of this as being like a sea anemone. And while the sea anemone moves, part of what moves the sea anemone is the tide. So can you imagine your breath is the tide? And you're moving just as much from the tide of your breath as you are from your muscles and your bones. As you return to center, pause there for a moment. Bring your arms by your sides once again. And walk your feet so they're about hip distance apart. If it's helpful, you can slide your hands underneath your low back and buttock area to give a little bit of support. Float your shins off the floor so your feet are at the height of your knees and your knees are above your hips. From the side, it would look like you have a 90-degree angle between your thighs and your torso and a 90-degree angle between your thighs and the calves. As you pause here, start to tip the knees away from one another, bringing the soles of your feet together. I'm going to turn so you get a slightly different view. This is probably something you haven't done before. It's like you're coming into Baddha Konasana. So soles of feet come together, knees are wide, but your hands remain either under your buttocks or next to your torso. Now do the opposite by bringing the inner knees to touch and then tipping the shins away from one another. See if you can press the knees together like you've got a $100 bill between your knees and you don't want to drop it. Then come back to the inner feet together, knees wide, the Baddha Konasana shape, and switch back and forth between these two movements. With the inner knees together and the shins tipping wide, it's a bit like Virasana, the hero pose in the legs. And when the soles of your feet come together and the knees are wide, it's a bit like the Baddha Konasana, or what's called the cobbler pose, or sometimes butterfly pose. And as you go back and forth between these two movements, feel free to linger if you feel like it would be helpful to pause and unpack the sensation. And is it easy to tell which of these movements is easier for you? Or do they seem to be relatively similar in their challenge? As you do this a few more times, notice how the work of suspending your legs in space is perhaps a little bit more challenging than you were expecting, considering all the work they do throughout the day to carry you around. And as you check in with this spiral movement, the next time your soles of your feet are together, pause for a few breaths in that Baddha Konasana shape. You can experiment how close your feet come in towards your buttocks and your hips to see how it works those hip muscles a little differently. As you continue to hover here, notice if there's any subtle trembling that's happening, any feeling of fatigue that starts to come into play. And now come back to the inner knees together, tipping the shins wide. And could you hover and linger here? Again, you've got that $100 bill between your knees and you don't want to drop it. So could you give a little extra squeeze of your knees together? Where do you feel the sensation in the work of this action? Does this hovering start to tax your breath? And can you feel a little trembling? And does that trembling get bigger as you hold another couple breaths? When you're ready, bend your knees with soles of feet on the floor. Come back to that check-in And it might actually feel good to straighten your legs out for a moment. As you unfold the hip joints, notice, what's it like now? Is there any warmth or tingling anywhere? A feeling of a flood of blood or sensation into a particular area? Or maybe a softening, a letting go. When you're ready, bend your knees, bring soles of your feet to the floor, and roll to one side, coming into the table position. As you come into table, fold up your blanket and set it to the side. Use the table as your launching pad for downward facing dog. As you press through the hands, claw your fingertips into the floor like a cat. With toes tucked under, slowly start to hover the knees off the earth as you lift into your Adho Mukha Svanasana. As you find the downward facing dog, bend one knee and press the other heel straight and back behind you. Switch sides like you're walking your dog. Feel a sense of the pulsing between one side and the other. And check in with how there might be some differences between your ankles. If you've ever had an ankle sprain or strain, you might find a little bit more resistance on that side. The healing of the tissues oftentimes brings a sense of stability, which could also be perceived as restriction, depending on how many times you've sprained your ankle and what sort of healing process your body is in and what stage it's at. Then try lifting and lowering both heels off the floor at the same time. Feeling into how that works a little bit more effort into the calves. When you're ready, walk your feet to meet your hands. As you push into the feet, inhale, lift halfway, lengthen forward. Exhale, fold. Press through feet, inhale, reach for the sky. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, arms by your sides. Samastitihi. Inhale, reach your arms up. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, fold forward, Uttanasana. Inhale, lift halfway, look forward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Repeat that a few times. Inhaling forward into your plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. As you find your own pace here, can you invite your breath to begin a little bit before your movement does? So that you hover for a moment in plank while you're breathing, but not yet moving. And you hover for a moment in down dog while you're breathing, but not yet moving. Then next time you're in the plank pose, hold there. Clawing your hands into the floor and pushing the earth away from you. If it's helpful, you can bring your knees to the floor. When you're ready, lower slow motion chaturanga, either straight legs or knees to the earth. When you come onto your belly, pause for a moment, make a pillow with your hands, and check in with what's most obvious to you. Then as you keep your forearms parallel to your chest and sternum, root through your legs and inhale, lift your chest and look forward. This is a low cobra pose with your hands in front of your chest and sternum. And the reason we're placing hands there today is because it prevents you from using your arms too much. And it focuses more on the effort of your legs and your spine to create the back bend. Exhale, slowly lower back to the earth. Then bring your hands under your shoulders. But as you lift, inhale, hands come off the floor as your chest lifts. Again, focusing on the work of your back body to create the lift. Exhale, lower it down. Now this time when you do cobra, instead of pushing your hands down, pull your hands into the floor as if you were going to drag your mat towards your hips. Almost as if you were trying to pull your spine like a snail out of its shell. Exhale, lower down. Push into the earth, back to downward facing dog. Inhale, lift your right leg up towards the ceiling. Make some circles with your right foot and ankle. Go the other direction. Exhale, step your right foot forward between your hands. Inhale, lift your torso for high lunge. Pause for a few moments in your high lunge. Dig a little deeper into your front heel. Noticing what happens when you grip your left big toe into the floor. Almost like you're trying to make a fist with your back foot. Then, on your exhale, lower hands to earth and step back to plank. Lower through the vinyasa, the chaturanga, your cobra, and back to downward facing dog. We'll do second side. Inhale, left leg reaches for the sky. Make some circles with your left foot and ankle. Go the other direction. Exhale, step left foot forward. Inhale, lift your torso, high lunge. Now grip your right big toe into the floor like you're making a fist with your right foot. At the same time, dig your left foot and heel firmly into the earth to connect to that steady foundation of your legs. Exhale, downward facing dog, or sweep right through to your vinyasa, doing the chaturanga, either cobra or upward facing dog, and exhale back to downward facing dog. And take a moment in your down dog or any other place that you can check in. The key to checking in is that there is enough steadiness and ease that your mind can focus on as much of the big picture of your experience as you can. If you're working too hard, your mind ends up a little distracted by whatever that difficulty is. From your downward facing dog, lift your heels, look forward, step or hop your feet to meet your hands. Inhale, lift halfway, lengthen. Exhale, fold, chin to chest. Push your feet, inhale, reach for the ceiling. Exhale, arms by your sides. We're going to do a little balancing. So if you're on carpet, it's going to be particularly challenging. And so it might be helpful for you to have a chair or a wall or even something like a bookshelf to have your hands on. I'm going to have bookshelf right in front of me. So first, start with either hands on hips or with the support in front of you. And have your feet hip distance apart. Now grip and make a fist with your toes into the floor. In super slow motion, lift your heels off the floor. And as you lift in super slow motion, can you feel not only the calves activate in your legs to create the lift, but also the arches of your feet are doing some work too? Can you grip your toes into the floor like you're trying to dig them a 1/4 inch into your mat? Almost like a cat would need a blanket or a cushion. And feel how that gripping creates a little bit more of that dynamic tension in the arches of your feet. Now in super slow motion, lower your heels back towards the earth. Chances are it's much harder to go slow on the way down than it is on the way up, but do your best. Now lift again, gripping toes into the floor like you're making a fist, and repeat that slow motion lower down. And can you tell if one foot, one leg is doing more of the work compared to the other? All right, chances are you have a dominant foot, ankle, leg. Let's do one more lift like that. Super slow motion upward off the floor with heels. Super slow motion downward. Now, just before you touch the earth, could you hover there? Almost like someone could bring a piece of rice paper and slide it underneath your heel, but you could also slightly feel the mat below you. Then firmly bring the heels down. Now it could feel nice here to make a little circle with your ankle. You can roll it around on the mat and then go the other direction. So when I make this circle, I'm rolling my toenails across the floor and then the ball of the foot across the floor. And try the other foot. Toenails roll across the foot, ball of the foot rolls across the floor. Change directions if you haven't already. Then go ahead and come back to your hip distance standing position. And once again, lift your heels off the floor. Now this time, as your heels are lifted, bend your knees and come into chair pose. It's helpful if you keep gripping your toes into the floor like you're making a fist with your foot. Imagine you have a block between your legs and squeeze the legs dynamically towards one another. Now at this point, that wall or countertop could be really helpful, or bringing your arms out to the side, which will also help you kind of catch your balance a little bit. Notice the dynamic action in your quadriceps because you're relying more on the front of the foot and less on the back of the foot for balance. When you're ready, lower your heels slowly to the floor and fold forward, Uttanasana. Inhale, lift halfway, lengthen forward. And exhale, step back to downward facing dog. Inhale, reach your right leg up towards the ceiling. Lift left heel high as well. Exhale, step right foot forward for high lunge. As you lift into the high lunge this time, notice what it feels like to lift your front heel off the floor like you just did in the Tadasana, in the chair pose. As you find your balance, what do you have to do to work your front leg with the heel lifted? On your exhale, could you keep your heel lifted as you lower hands into downward facing dog? Or is it more appropriate to bring heel to the floor first? Vinyasa, moving through any combination of stillness and movement that helps you integrate and assimilate what you're doing. We'll meet in downward facing dog for the second side. Inhale, left leg reaches for the sky, make some circles with your foot and ankle. Exhale, step forward, left foot between your hands. Inhale, high lunge. This time, lift your front heel off the floor. It's almost like you're wearing a stiletto. You're bringing that left heel as high up towards the ceiling as you can and noticing the grip of your big toes into the floor. You have a much smaller foundation, so your balance will be quite a bit more wobbly here. As you explore what little steadiness you can gather, exhale, see how it is to leave your heel lifted as you transition to the floor. Downward facing dog into your vinyasa or any combination of stillness and movement that works for you. We'll meet in downward facing dog. Inhale, heels lift, look forward. Exhale, step or hop, feet to meet hands. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach for the sky. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, arms by your sides. Inhale, chair pose, this time with heels on the floor. Sense into how it's different than your stiletto chair pose you did a little while ago. Could you really sink so far back into your heels that you could lift the balls of your feet off the floor, which tends to make my balance feel really wobbly. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, back to downward facing dog. Inhale, sweep right leg up. Exhale, step right foot forward. This time, bring your left knee to the earth and point your left toes like you're going to do cobra pose with your back foot. So toenails on the floor. Now with hands either on the floor or on blocks, push through the left foot and slowly lift your back knee off the floor. So you could think of this as upward facing dog with your back leg. It could be helpful to have hands on blocks. You decide. As you push into your front foot, really press the toenails of your back foot into the floor and give yourself a sense of lift through the chest. Now, if you want to make it more demanding, you could take your hands up to your front thigh. Woo! As you can see, that offset my balance. It's also making my left foot want to go into the foot cramp territory. So, when you're ready, bring your hands down, tuck your back toes under, and return to downward facing dog. Inhale, plank. Explore your vinyasa or any combination of stillness and movement. From your down dog, we'll do the second side. Inhale, left leg sweeps for the sky. Exhale, step left foot forward, this time right knee on the floor. As you come into the low lunge, have your toenails of right foot down and lift your right knee off the floor. This again, it's like upward facing dog with that back foot. The front of the ankle gets long. The back of the foot, the sole of the foot gets short. And notice how that feels to bear weight on your foot in this way. It's really not what it was designed to do. And so chances are it doesn't have a lot of practice doing it. If you did on the other side and it feels okay here, lifting hands higher is significantly more demanding on the back leg and your front leg. So you can always keep hands on blocks. Exhale, knee to floor, downward facing dog. Optional vinyasa. Moving through your plank, your chaturanga, your up dog, back to down dog. From your downward facing dog, inhale, lift heels, look forward. Exhale, step or hop, feet to hands. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach for the sky. Exhale, arms by your sides. Pause. Take a breath for nothing. If it feels good, you can rest one hand on your heart or both hands somewhere on your torso to hone in on the pace of your breath. To hone in on how your heart rate has changed. So we're going to transition a little differently into the high lunge now rather than from down dog. Take your hands to your hips, bring your big toes to touch. Bend your knees as if you're coming into the chair pose. Press into your right foot. Pretend like you have a roller skate on your left foot and slide your left foot back, just hovering it above the earth. Inhale, lift into high lunge, arms by your ears. Exhale, turn open into warrior two. And pause and hold here. What would it be like to hold here for 30 seconds? As you sink a little deeper into your front thigh, checking in with how your breath feels. And as you hold, you decide, do you keep your front heel, the right heel on the floor, or would you like to experiment with your stiletto on the front leg again? Pushing the ball of the foot down and lifting the heel for the last 5 seconds. Now your choice, stay with heel lifted or bring it back to the earth and tip into side angle. Forearm to thigh, top arm overhead. The forearm that's on the thigh pushes down as if you're trying to press your thigh to the earth, but the heel continues to lift up towards the knee as you're on your stiletto. Now, if that front heel's on the floor, push it down. Do an opposite style movement. Inhale back to warrior two. Ground your front heel. Lift back to high lunge, torso turning to the front of your mat. Take your hands to your hips, lean forward, pretend like you're on the roller skates again, and slide your back foot to meet your front foot. Stand tall. Second side, bend your knees, sinking into chair pose. Slowly slide your right foot into the high lunge, lifting torso. Exhale, turn to warrior two. Sweeping arms out to the sides. Now push through the ball of your front foot, and if it would be interesting for you today, lift your front heel off the floor like you're wearing stilettos in that front leg. And how would it be to hold here for 30 seconds? Would it be better for you to have your heel on the floor and hover it towards the end of your hold? Or is it something you're enjoying exploring? The way the heel up creates a sense of lift and steadiness. On your exhale, tip into side angle, top arm over ear, push your bottom forearm down into the thigh. So your left shoulder, bottom shoulder gets a little extra engagement. Again, you can bring your front heel to the floor at any time. Feeling that sense of control, that sense of challenge into that heel. Inhale, warrior two. Exhale, ground your heel. And inhale back to the high lunge. Now lean forward, either arms in front of you or hands to hips. Slide your right big toe on the floor back to chair and stand tall. Now we'll add another balancing pose into that series here. So you might find it helpful to have a block for the half moon. You'll place it near the front of your mat. With hands on hips, bend your knees, sink down, push into your right foot, slide your left foot back into the lunge. Exhale, warrior two, turning open. Inhale, side angle, reaching top arm over ear. Pause there. Take your top hand to your hip. Grab the block in your right hand. Look to the floor. Now walking your left foot in first will make this a little easier. If you want to experiment with the extra challenge of a long stance, lean into your front leg, float your back foot off the floor into the Ardha Chandrasana. How would it be to balance here, pushing into your front foot as if you could lift your heel off the floor? Now you could try if you want to, but that would leave you with very small stiletto for your foundation. And I might recommend keeping the heel down to rely a little bit more on your bones today. When you're ready, super slow motion, bend your front leg, tap your big toe to the floor, and then lift the leg back up. Repeat that 2 more times. Super slow motion, bend your front leg, tap your big toe towards the floor, and then lift into the Ardha Chandrasana. So your movement is really coming from deep in the hip joint in collaboration with your right knee and right ankle. Last one, lift up. Now this time, super slow motion, softly set your back foot to the floor, coming into the side angle. Return to warrior two. Back to high lunge. Slide forward into chair pose. Stand tall, take a breath for nothing. Chances are you're going to feel a big difference between right leg and left leg. Chances are you're going to feel your breath and your heart rate moving a little bit quickly. We'll do the second side. Take hands to hips, bend your knees as if you're sinking down into a chair or a bar stool. Slide your right foot slowly back behind you into your high lunge. Transition to warrior two. Side angle. And pause in your side angle. Take your top hand to your hip. Grab block in left hand. And you decide how long apart your feet are as you slowly lift your back foot off the floor. As you come into your half moon pose, can you rely a little bit more on your heel and the bones of your standing leg? It's very different than the stiletto work we did. But can you feel that strong support that the arch of the foot and the ball of the foot give you when you engage and grip the floor with your left toes? Now, as you did from the foot, from the hip, bend your front knee, lightly tap your back foot to the floor, lift back up in that front leg. So again, the back leg comes to the floor because your front leg creates depth. It gets down and deep. Your back leg does not come to the floor because you tip your torso up. Your torso stays in one place, and the front leg lifts and lowers your back leg a few times. To come out, super slow motion, lightly stepping back foot into side angle. Warrior two. High lunge. Sliding back foot forward. Chair pose. Press into your feet, lift tall. Mountain pose. From here, you might find it helpful to have your blocks at the front of your mat. You're also going to take a blanket to the middle of your mat, so it's folded up to create a little bit of cushion for your knees. Start standing by your blocks with the blanket behind you. Take hands to heart. Inhale, chair pose. Exhale, fold forward, Uttanasana. With your blocks on their lowest height or hands on the floor, inhale, step back to plank pose with your hands on the blocks. Now from your plank, keep your toes tucked under like you're doing chaturanga, and inhale into upward facing dog. Pushing hands down, lifting chest up. Exhale, downward facing dog. So you're going right from plank to up dog. You're skipping chaturanga in between. Inhale, plank. Push into the plank as you exhale. As you push the blocks away from you, inhale, press down with hands, lift your spine up towards the ceiling, crown of head towards the ceiling, and exhale back to downward facing dog. Repeat that again. Inhale, plank. Grip your toes into the floor. Squeeze your buttocks by gripping toes. Press your hands down. Maybe look upward. Exhale, downward facing dog. Now inhale. Go ahead and walk your hands to meet your feet. So you're coming hands to the back of your mat. Now walk your feet a few inches and your hands a few inches closer to your blanket. So you'll have about a foot's distance between your feet and the blanket. When you're ready, bend your knees, lift your heels up, and start to squat your butt towards your heels. So you're in a toe balance. Now, how would it be to lift your torso up and find balance on the balls of your feet? Could you bring your hands together in front of your heart? As you make a fist with your toes, how would it feel? So it's not malasana where you're bringing your heels to the floor. Instead, you're tipping your heels off the floor to bring your shins more towards parallel with the earth and lifting the torso tall. Then could you tip your torso back and slowly, without falling, slowly lower your knees towards the blanket and then sit up or stand up on your knees. Start with your knees on the floor, and we're going to experiment with stepping forward a few times, but in a way that might be new or different for you. So as much as it's possible for you, keep your hands on your hips and step your right foot forward. Now have your left toes tucked under and lean forward to push into your right foot and step your left foot forward. Now right foot stays in front. Step your left foot down and back. Have the toes lightly touch the floor so most of the work stays in the front leg. Bring the right knee to meet the left. Step your left foot forward. Lean forward, lift your back foot off the floor. Most of the weight comes from your front leg. Shift forward into your front leg. Back toe touches the floor very lightly to support your back knee coming to earth. Left knee meets right. Switch to right side, right foot forward. Lean forward again. Use your back leg even less to lift up to standing. Left foot steps behind you. Use it even less to lower to the floor. Left foot steps forward. Same thing. More of the work is in your front leg. Less of the help comes from your back leg. Now we're going to do it one more time, but this time bring your toenails on the floor so your back leg has even less to help you with. So interesting enough, your big toe is part of propulsion, and so you're not letting your back leg get propelled off the floor by your big toe. As you lean forward, lift your back leg up and come to standing. As you lean forward with your toenails on the floor, slowly lower knee down, bring right leg back to left. Try this with the left foot forward. Again, toenails on the floor so you're not able to propel off the earth with your big toe. And leaning back, toenails touch first so there's less support from your back leg. Now last one, you might have your blocks in front of you for this. Right foot steps forward, lean forward, lift your back leg, hovering up to standing. Now this time as you bring your back leg to the floor, feel free to use your blocks. Would it be possible to bring the knee to touch before the toes? And then try on the other side. Left foot forward, leaning, lifting off that back leg. Now maybe with hands on blocks, could you bring your back knee to touch the floor before your toes? So at the end, I have this like drop that happens because I don't have the strength to get all the way to the floor using just my front leg. You could then try it one more time on each side without your blocks. Ooh, hovering, setting your knee down, switching sides, leaning forward, pushing using your front leg, lowering so that your back leg doesn't really catch you. Your front leg does all of the holding. And then both knees on the blanket. Take your hands to your hips and feel this sense of squeeze through your upper hamstrings, your lower buttocks. And like you're a plank, lean back from your knees and button your front ribs towards your front thighs. So you're not back bending. This is not the right way. Today, button your ribs towards your thighs. Use abdominal strength to fire up your quads. You can lean a little forward and backward in that way. So there's engagement from back where your hamstrings meet your buttocks. There's engagement from front in the quads all the way up to your diaphragm and your front ribs. Last one, you might lean back and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Return to standing. Then tuck your toes under, sit back on your heels, interlace your fingers, and come into the happy feet pose. Reach palms up for the ceiling. Draw your front ribs towards your back ribs. Almost like you're trying to press your front ribs towards where my fingers are below your shoulder blades. Then, maybe with hands helping you, can you tip your heels to the floor and come into Malasana? And from the Malasana, I'm going to turn to the side so you can see me. Have a blanket with some extra height underneath it. And from your Malasana, sit on your blanket. Now keep the right leg in Malasana and stretch your left leg out in front of your hip. Pause for a moment and check in with what you're noticing. Again, you have right knee is like the squatting position, out to the side. Now turn towards your right leg. And you can float your arms in space to really focus on the torso and your spine doing the work. If you provide a little bit of support with your hands, make sure the arms are not what's pulling you into the pose. Slowly derotate, same bent leg, walk it so it touches your inner straight leg. The knee moves across the midline, more towards your spine. Now start to turn again. If this feels compressive in the belly, let's say you're pregnant or menstruating, you could always do a variation where you turn away. As you find this turning here, notice how the knee is moving across the central axis of your pose. And what does that change in what you feel through your low back and your hips? Derotate. Last station on this first side. Step your right foot over your straight leg. Hook your left arm around right knee and slowly turn into the twist. Now the leg has gone even more across the midline. And feel how that is for you today. Valuable to practice all 3 of these options, not necessarily every time you do the pose, but to revisit the ones that are maybe unfamiliar or a little bit sticky from time to time to see how your relationship with them has changed. As you derotate, uncross the bent leg and step it a little bit out to the side like you're going to do the squatting position again. And then if it's possible for you, you can have your hands floating off the floor and step your other foot in. Now, if you need support, have your hands on the earth and give yourself that support. Now switch, so the right leg is straight, left knee is bent. Now the leg moves a little off to the side so you can more easily turn your belly across and around. As you turn your belly across and around, can you feel into where the central axis is? Not only through your spine, but also through your legs. Slowly derotate. Now the bent leg foot is going to walk in towards the straight leg. The knee comes a little across the midline and slowly turn around once again. So you slowly turn around. Notice what is different. You may like the other way better than this way, or you may like this way better than the other. So instead of just thinking of this as something you like or dislike, start to dig into why you might prefer it this way or the other way. And then gradually de-rotate and do the last option where your foot steps over your thigh, your belly turns towards your thigh, and you're feeling that sense of the crossing of the midline. As you feel the energy of the leg coming across the midline, and you notice how that impacts your spine and even your breath. Give yourself another couple moments to soak into this. Slowly de-rotate, extend both legs out in front of you, and pause for a couple seconds. In the Dandasana, reach your arms up towards the ceiling and feel a lift. As you lift up towards the sky, imagine someone has taken hold of your wrists and they're pulling you up towards the ceiling. Can you press your heels into the floor and imagine you're trying to drag your sticky mat towards your sit bones using your heels? Slowly float your arms down, and then when you're ready, roll onto your back. With your knees bent in front of you, slowly roll your spine to the earth, one vertebra at a time. With knees bent and soles of your feet on the floor, pause. Bring your arms overhead like a diamond. And as you push into your feet, slowly roll your spine off the earth into a bridge pose. And notice what it feels like here in your bridge to have a really wide upper back in contact with the earth. Slowly roll back to the earth, one vertebra at a time. And repeat this a few more times. As you roll one vertebra with your arms in the diamond position, we're going to come into a bridge pose that's not your regular bridge pose. So instead of lifting your chest, focus on keeping your upper back near the floor and roll your vertebrae one at a time, very slowly away from the earth. With your upper back wide and in contact with the floor, pause. And can you direct your breath more into your upper back shoulder blade area? Very slowly roll back to the earth, one vertebra at a time. Repeat that a few more times, rolling one vertebra at a time away from the earth, but keeping the upper back wide. You decide how high you lift your spine, keeping the base of your neck and upper back on the earth. Repeat that very slowly. The next time you slowly curl your spine away from the earth, pause and hover with your upper back wide on the floor. As you push into your feet, lean into your right foot so there's more weight. There's more weight on your upper right shoulder and right lung. Can you breathe your right lung more into the floor? And shift your weight back to center and take more weight in your left foot. And can you breathe your left upper lung more into the floor? So if you were to lift in the bridge how you normally do it, your chest would be getting most of the breath. But I want your upper back to get most of the breath right now. Not because the other way is wrong, just because I want you to try it in a different way today. Now come back to the center. And again, in the center, can you direct your breath into your upper back? And slowly, one vertebra at a time, roll back to the earth. Then go ahead and grab your block. And as you push into your feet, slide your block underneath your hips and your buttock area. So now you can lift your chest, more like the bridge pose where you're opening the front lung. And as you come into bridge with opening the front lung, you might take your arms down by your sides, which can exaggerate that chest, side lung, front lung opening. When you're ready, lift one or both legs up towards the ceiling. If you're on a squishy surface like a blanket, it might make the balance a little bit challenging. So you're welcome to keep one foot on the floor at a time. As you lift your legs up towards the sky, checking in with how it feels to powerfully lift your legs, your feet, kind of like you did in all that heel lift standing pose work today. Imagine that your heels are shooting up towards the ceiling. There's a sense of power and activation that comes from deep in the legs and hips and shoots up towards the sky. If you remember back to how you started practice today with that turning of the leg bones with the knees bent, could you turn your leg bones here with your legs straight? Turning the heels towards one another like a ballerina. Turning the big toes towards one another and the heels wide. And potentially exploring that movement a few times. Whenever you're ready, one foot at a time or both feet together, bend your knees. Slowly lower your feet to the floor. Push your feet into the earth and slide your block out from underneath you. Bring the arms into the cactus shape or anywhere it's comfortable. Inhale, tilt your tailbone into the floor and arc your ribs a little bit away from the earth. Exhale, scoop your tailbone towards your knees and press your ribs and your low back to the floor. Do this a couple more times. Inhale, tailbone into the earth. Feel your ribs arc. Exhale, tailbone towards your knees. Feel low back press to the floor. As you find the wave of your breath, let this movement move through you for a few rounds. As you finish the one you're on, set yourself up in the Shavasana. You can add a cushion or a blanket under your legs. Giving yourself time to rest. I oftentimes think of the Shavasana as an opportunity to integrate and assimilate, not on a thinking level, but in that intuitive way that my body remembers. When you're ready, bend your knees. Roll to one side, pausing there. And press your hands into the earth and lift yourself up. Coming to seated with your palms together in front of your heart. Take a moment to offer yourself gratitude for the dedication that it took to practice today, and for the space that you set aside in your life to connect more deeply to yourself, so you might in turn be able to support others in your life. Make a little bow forward. I thank you so much for joining today, sharing in this practice. It's such an honor, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.